You're listening to Till the Bottom. For better or for worse, everything is fascinating if you dig deep enough. If you agree with this, then this podcast might be right for you. Let's start talking. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Till the Bottom. And you're listening to Nacho and Mitra. We are planning to continue on from the last episode where we started discussing our standing with respect to skepticism and what our worldview really looks like. So we started off by, Nacho started off by introducing himself to have come from Mexico and going through his entire process of rigorous Catholic Christian doctrination. And how
we did a little bit of recapitulation, like a quick summary of what we talked about in the first episode, and then we hit it off from there. So essentially what the last episode was about, just like we were reminding some of the most important points of our life from infancy to adolescence that were important in our path towards acquiring a more skeptical worldview. Essentially, I think we focused for the most part on how we left religious belief.
Yeah. No, but in principle, we first made a platform on pretty much relating to where we stand.
Because those two things go hand in hand anyway, right? I mean, I think probably the first step that everyone that would call himself or herself a skeptic was to live religious doctrine, right? It's kind of the nurturing ground for everybody in the world. Yeah. What varies is the flavor of the particular religious doctrine that you're born into. So from there, we're going to start now talking about, I think, influences, perhaps.
Or in principle, like how we moved on. Like of course, in the last episode, I started off by talking about my background, and in principle, what I said, my only piece of skepticism was one day I just come back with a certain question, like what if there's no God? But then the point is like what progress we went through post the initial doubts, right?
Yeah, I just want to point that out. There's something you told me off camera, which was that you felt that in your personal story you sounded like, one day I just woke up and I discovered, I did a little bit of introspection and realized that I was not a believer anymore. Mm-hmm. And then you actually spent some time afterwards thinking about it and realized that was not quite fits the story. You told me that probably there was another influence in you living your religious doctrine.
So I guess I do come from a family which is very left-leaning. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you are going through your phase of adolescence, that's when we are at our purest with thinking about things in a very idealistic manner. And we tend to, I don't know, like I guess majority of the people go through a phase when they see things are unfair, things are not unfair. Mm-hmm. And at that stage, you're really trying to figure out solutions, and things seem to be white and black. Mm-hmm. So clearly when you see marginalized people in society, you think there's something wrong with that. Clearly when you see that Hindus and Muslims are fighting for absolutely pointless reason, so there's a problem with that. You have so I also had similar problems. I had problems with looking at poverty. It sounds very cliched, of course, but I think a lot of people go through this phase. When you see that there is some serious imbalance, and you often try to find the root to that problem. And I often would say that the roots come from religious prejudices and dogmas. So in principle, so my mom, she happens to be quite religious, and she, throughout my childhood, has taken me around to all the very intensely religious destinations where we go travel to, and then you see the craziness of humanity.
Like some sort of pilgrimage or something.
Yeah, in principle, yeah. So I have gone to a lot of pilgrimages throughout my childhood.
Like temples or...
Yes, and generally a lot of them are in the Himalayas. So it turns out not to be a bad situation.
Not an easy access temple.
And I guess that's where my father comes to accepting that. Because he would say that it's in a nice location. We go for a trip. We do whatever your mom wants to do. And at that point of time, he also thought I was a very religious guy. I was probably religious because I enjoyed following all the doctrines and following all the rituals. Similarly with my sister. So you'll go to these places and spaces, and over time, there's a sense of consumerism, religious consumerism that you see in these locations, which really start hitting a certain knob.
Okay, you think that those two things should not marry together, should not be merged?
No, because there's a ridiculous amount people coming from unprivileged backgrounds even are donating and giving up on something which is quite a farce, because a lot of the money that goes in there is so farcical. Of course, I'm not denying that some good probably also happens.
I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate there, because I think a lot of people realize that religious institutions take advantage of the believers. Yeah. But then the pushback that such people are likely to adopt is that, one thing is it's religion per se, the doctrine, the theology, and a different thing is the institutions that manage or administer that theology. And they would say that the theology might be flawless, but the institutions are flawed.
And this is pretty much the go-to argument with anyone when you get this point across.
Yeah, but through that argument, they manage to salvage religion. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's humans are funny, but God is not, and God has its theology, and people probably the problem is when if you leave the theology open to interpretation of humans, then you are very likely to run into human foibles. Yeah. And
that's the getaway for a lot of religious-minded people. Like, it's not the theology, not the actual essence of it, which is the problem.
Like, the essence remains pure anyway, somehow.
But that's I don't care about the essence in that sense. But what I'm saying is the point is, because some people believe in this essence, they go ahead and believe in so much more. And so it's just this feeling of identifying with something which allows them to make use of it, right? For people who want to make use of it. So of course, then the argument will be that of course nations also do that.
Yeah, I understand how can that function a little bit as a wake-up call to realize in the first place that the people that are the heads of the religion, the people that have a way of profiting from the religious fervor of a population, are essentially acting misguidedly or using religion misguidedly. So that I understand how that can work as an entry point towards doubting the whole house of cards that religious indoctrination is.
So maybe I didn't make this point clear also. So this is my conflict, not with belief, but with organized belief.
Organized belief, that's somehow different.
Yes. So this aspect is something that became very clear to me very obviously. The fact about belief is a trickier issue. It's a more of a scientific journey, which you also went through. But that I come back to that later.
Yeah, because it's completely possible to demolish one, meaning organized belief, and retain the religion. Yeah. A lot of people do that. A lot of people, I know personally, I know this is anecdotal, but I'm sure that everybody can relate to this. People that would say, if you asked somebody, would you consider yourself Catholic? Some people might say something like, or no, I believe in God. Or I believe in something else, but I don't like the Catholic Church. I don't like the way they handle themselves. I don't believe in the church authorities. But still, they keep two things. They completely compartmentalize.
And then they kind of argue that, the churches are in a sense trying to do, just organize our thought process.
Yeah, the curious thing is how in some people questioning the organized part of a religion, it's the entry point towards questioning the whole structure, the organized part and the theological structure. And in some other people are perfectly happy to keep both separate and trash one away and keep the other. And I don't know what are the...
But So I would say I honestly don't have that much of a issue with
people
who have maybe there's a spiritual self.
Their personal
because it's very harmless and it keeps a lot of people very happy.
That is true.
And then of course you're misguided and there are issues with that also, which we'll probably discuss over time. But for me, this became more and more clear. Like when we start reading history and the ridiculous amount of bloodshed that happened during our independence between the Hindus and the Muslims, I saw my father get visibly affected in the Gujarat riots, which is in the west of India, where so basically there's this piece of land in a very religious place in Ayodhya where the Muslims and the Hindus are fighting for.
That sounds a little bit like the conflict over Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's a mini scale, because Jerusalem is an ongoing battle forever. But this happened over a period of time, after which some Muslims attacked some Hindu pilgrimage guys who were going by a train. And completely detached from that, in the West, these Hindus get completely crazy and they just demolish the Muslims. And the kind of stories you heard were so ridiculous. Then, of course, you have all this 9/11 happened. So there's also the global context. Yeah. And then in 2007 or 2008, there was some ridiculous terrorist attack that happened in Mumbai. So we have so many of these sporadic incidences where we see the kind of tensions or kind of sudden rises of mob mentality that rises between Hindus and Muslims, because they're Hindus and Muslims. So this identifying with an organized religion and why the other one is horrible, these things become more and more clear over time.
Yeah.
So, and then when you read enough, you realize that it's like these pointless pieces of identity that we have, which have so much power to destroy things, and that is where I very clearly got away from very soon, very quickly.
Yeah, that's again. I mean, I'm sorry to keep coming back to the same point, but I can't completely understand why you're realizing of all these senseless conflicts and bloodshedding and so on, political disturbances, etc.
Of course, there's a social aspect to it also.
That very quickly leads you to reject the organized aspect of a religion.
Yeah.
But it doesn't lead you to reject the theological, spiritual part. It doesn't lead you to the rejection of your own personal deity. Your version
maybe before I go
that's
there,
different. Yeah.
Maybe before I go there, to talk about this question of belief or whether there is. Did you have something similar going on with you, where it was clear to you that there is something?
Really.
For you, it was the same thing because
I didn't start questioning religion from the point of view of seeing the conflicts around the world that religion causes, because near to me, none of those conflicts, they weren't just not reaching me. Mexico is a very homogeneous country, religiously speaking. So
you were not directly impacted by it?
No, those conflicts essentially do not exist, or at least they don't rise up to the level of violence in the name of...
But you would make a distinction, even back then, would you make a distinction between Christianity and belief?
Yeah, so that's why I went through my my New Age phase, right?
So that was your way of exploring that.
Yeah, but it all started. My entry towards questioning Christianity or Catholicism in particular was mainly because of on the one hand, fear. I think I talked about this in the previous episode. My fear of heaven and hell, and forget hell. Actually, my fear of heaven. Sorry.
Yeah. Fear of heaven. Yes.
My fear. I wanted a way out from that, and it's a little different, probably.
But this is not something that happened to you one fine day. You evolved this thought process.
Yeah, no, but I wanted something that made sense. I wanted to believe in something spiritual, but that was not in opposition to how the real world works. I wanted to marry both things together. I wanted to follow a religious tradition that did not that somehow was harmonious with the way the real world works. And that's not the case at all with Catholicism and with the stuff that you read in the Bible, right? Yeah. There you have all sorts of miracles that are essentially the suspension of the natural laws. I don't remember who gave that definition of what miracles are, but essentially, I think it's mostly correct, right? There are these things that happen that some people in the biblical narrative can just perform single-handedly, suddenly, out of nowhere, and for instance, Jesus gave back the sight to somebody that was blind just because of out of his magical powers. I don't know. I don't see his connection to God. I mean, he's son of God.
By all that.
Yeah, but I was never content with those things. It just didn't make sense. And
what was the first convincing story you heard?
A convincing story about what?
Which I don't know.
None of this was convincing. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to retain my spirituality, quote unquote spirituality. Probably, I don't know if we need to talk a little bit about what spirituality is and how different it is from religion per se. Because I believe, I don't even like the word a lot because I immediately related to
it can be an umbrella to put in a lot of
supernatural. You know, everything that it.
But some people get very close to, like, of course. So there's this one friend of mine who is a musician. So with him, I had the same argument about God and all this, and he told me that, of course, he doesn't believe in, like, there's a figure up there and there's hell and heaven. But some days he plays music and he feels it. Like, you know, there's this element of high that you get.
Yeah, but that's a really... No, I understand. There are moments that, and there are certain things, there are certain stimuli that provoke in you what you would call, I don't know how to call it, transcendental states, emotional states, or alter your perception and your emotional landscape in such a significant way that you find no other way to describe it other than this is kind of a spiritual moment or something of the sort. And it's just, I just think we don't have the language to talk about those things without borrowing the same language that is used to describe religious
experiences. That also gets into the bracket of
and that is problematic.
Spiritual feeling.
Yeah, that is problematic. I think that's very unfortunate that we don't have a different kind of language to talk about those things, and that you have to
because there's clearly stuff we don't understand yet.
Yeah, sure, but okay, we can just before. I don't know if we're going to delve into that, but what I want to say is something along the lines of, it's really unfortunate that in order to describe those quote-unquote transcendental experiences, we have to resort to quasi-religious, new age type of language. And that if you identify yourself, if you are really skeptical about all of those supernatural things and supernatural claims, and still you want to talk about that, you have to give like a pamphlet full of caveats before you even can address those topics, and that is time consuming, and that is just the economical, linguistically speaking. It's just not. It's not the optimal case, but what to do? I mean, so far it's hard to use purely secular speech to describe those experiences, and I wish there was a way to do that. I think I haven't read the book. I haven't read the book. This Sam Harris book, Waking Up. Okay. I think he's kind of. I haven't read the book, but I have heard him talking about his book and generally his take on spirituality. And essentially, the message is that you really don't need to subscribe to anything supernatural to acknowledge that there will be some experiences, some psychological experiences that will come close to those the experiences described in when religious people or people that believe in supernatural stuff getting these like ecstatic states. And I get that. I don't know.
So I get that totally, but here it's open to interpretation, right? Like I am not convinced by it, but so back in the days, the fact that humans are like something perfectly chiseled as a form of God and all the other animals are much lower category probably made sense because there was absolutely no clue about evolution, genes and all this.
There was no way. There
development.
Look, actually...
So then I wouldn't even go I won't go criticizing those people for actually having religious beliefs to explain some stuff.
But there is a sense of laziness, nevertheless, because now we do have that information.
So the sense of laziness is there because now we are indoctrined by the scientific method. Like we, as in like who have
no. But what I mean is that all the information regarding, for instance, about that specific aspect, it's basically the knowledge of evolution as a theory that will give you a very large entry point towards questioning the foundations of religious belief in the sense of humans being occupying a special, unique niche within nature. In a way, we do, but you don't need. Evolution gives you the whole.
It gives you a satisfying answer.
It gives you a much more fascinating, satisfying answer to that question.
With people who came up with concepts of agnosticism, even in before Christ. Like there's a lot of there's a few.
Thomas Huxley was
there's a few Hinduism. Like there's some book philosophies from back in the days. Like there's a whole wiki page on agnosticism in Hinduism, and of course roots of that goes into Buddhism and Jainism as well. But there's this other absolute brutal set of thoughts. Which I forget the name right now, but where they deny everything and everything is an illusion.
That's it's like skepticism on steroids. Yeah, that's the I don't know. In the West world,
back in the days, you could actually conceive these ideas. So I am impressed by it because nowadays we can actually contemplate a lot of things because we are slowly getting to know things, and the worldview is such. The way we have constructed our worldview, it's the highest density of highest percentage of people ever thinking in a streamlined manner logically. Back in the days, your social constructs didn't allow you to think logically. These were the set of rules, and you're supposed to follow them, and there is no questioning to it because it is.
But that definitely was hand in hand with.
So I think we are just lucky to be able to think this way.
Well, there is some sort of
the way we have been trained. To think.
No, from that standpoint, we are privileged in that sense. By virtue of pure luck to have been born in at least a world in which evolution is as solid as a theory can get. Essentially, even though a lot of people still question it, I had my own little debate with a Palestinian guy. I'm not gonna name names here, but.
I had those issues.
Okay, I just.
This evolution is something that the Britishers made up.
No,
that's one.
Well, it came from Britain. No, you need to give them that point. No, there was a time when I started to read Richard Dawkins. And I started with a book that actually I borrowed from you, which was The Greatest Show on Earth, by Richard Dawkins. And I think that was the first book I read.
That was the first you read?
On evolution, per se, only about focused on evolution. Was that or the selfish gene? No, I think it was that, and then the selfish gene came later. Anyway.
Because that blew your mind away.
Yeah, absolutely. We might even have a whole episode to talk about the implication.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was pretty much reading about the topic, so I had all these ideas fresh in my mind. And I was out with a group of friends, and there was a Palestinian guy, a Christian Palestinian, actually, not a Muslim one. And then we were out. I had already some drinks on me, and we were having dinner. And I'm talking with a group of friends. It's a large table. I have this guy next to me, and I was talking to the people on my left. He was on my right. And I don't remember how the conversation started, but for some reason, the statistic came out of around 40% of Americans, if I remember correctly, do not believe in evolution or something. Some humongous percentage.
Actually, it's not 40. It's probably more.
I don't know. I don't think it's more. I hope it's not. I don't think it's more. But it's in a par with Turkey. There's no other Western industrialized country that has that
evolution level.
So it was essentially the same level of disbelief that you find in the US, you find in Turkey. I was shocked by that. And we were talking about that. There was an Indian girl there I was talking to. And then this guy listens to me mentioning that statistics and just immediately turns towards me and tells me, "What? Do you believe in evolution?" And my reply, I was immediately like, "Don't you believe in evolution?" And then
someone had to hold you out.
No. I was very civil, but I had really all these facts and all these things very fresh in my mind at the moment. And then he came up with, I don't know, the argument par excellence against evolutionary theory, which is, how could you explain the eye, the human eye, such a perfect piece of machinery, etc., etc., etc. And I had just kind of read about it, and I could cite at the moment. I forgot part of it, but I could cite, that there are actually creatures in the world that are that have intermediate stages between
level of sophistication
of their eyes, and that it's actually possible, for instance, of fish that live in caves and lizards that live in caves where it's dark all the time. They lose their eyesight. They lose they are gradually losing the functionality of their eyes, and then they can recover it and so on.
So all this to explain the whole process.
To explain the whole process, etc. And the whole point is, we live in a world where all the information about evolutionary theory is there from many different fronts. It's
again, so many people have said this so many times. The fact that they call it the theory of evolution is where the problem is.
It's a misunderstanding of what the word theory means.
Because people assume theory, there's so many theories we can just come up with.
For people that are not sufficiently, how to say it, scientifically well versed. I don't want to sound condescending. I really don't want, but I find no other way to describe this. And is for them the word theory is essentially what people that have a more scientific leaning understand by hypothesis. It's essentially that, right? When they say evolution is just a theory, they kind of are saying it's just some hypothesis, and there are many there on the table, and that's just not the case anymore. There are many doubts, I would say, and there's still plenty of debate about exactly how evolution works. But on the basic fact, as Darwin described it, which is essentially descent with modification, as he described in The Origin of Species, that's not up for debate anymore, right?
No, it's not.
That is just not there. It's not up for grabs. The process, not. And I'm reading a book at the moment which is kind of a challenge towards how we understand evolution. It's written by, I think he's a cognitive psychologist or linguist or both or philosopher, Jerry Fodor, and then there's another co-author there, an Italian guy.
And the title is very scandalous.
It's very scandalous because the title is What Darwin Got Wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm always very self-aware of reading that when I'm walking in the tram. And
no, it's quite important because that could be one of these paranormal activity books.
It's the perfect book from a religious person that just wants to stay entrenched in his religious beliefs.
But of course, Darwin didn't get every.
He didn't know genes existed, right?
Exactly. So there was a fundamental.
He didn't know about the
gene. He came up with this entire idea of panspermia, where no, I think he was involved. Panzine. He gave the word panzine. I guess panspermia. Someone else came up with.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the guy.
In fact, the word gene, who was it? Mendel? No, not Mendel, of course. The people who discovered Mendel 30 years after he discovered the gene.
I don't know where the word gene comes from exactly.
Yeah, they called it pangene.
Oh.
And then at some point they said, pan sounds a bit too much. And,
okay.
Let's just call it gene.
Sounds like a good decision.
But right? Gene, I guess the roots of it is Genesis.
Anyway, the book, I just wanted to comment on the book.
Okay, I just went off track.
No. Just quickly. Which is, even this book, it's not about rejecting evolution as a theory. It's a very interesting book. What they are trying to push back against is natural selection as the main engine for evolution. Because they cite other things that we know now also play an important role, like horizontal gene transfer, epigenetics. What else is there? The restrictions, the physical-chemical restrictions on the growth and form of organisms.
Yeah.
That natural selection doesn't have to select over every possible body that you can build. There are physical restrictions on how what bodies are.
What was not possible,
yeah.
So you cannot say that, okay, we can evolve into a human spider.
Yeah. So there are a lot of internal constrictions that narrow the range of organisms over which natural selection is going to filter.
It's still a very nuanced argument.
Yeah,
essential.
The point is even the level of the debate. It's not at questioning whether evolution exists or not.
Yeah.
It's about what happens. How does it work exactly? What are the fine details of the mechanisms? There's natural selection, but there's also sexual selection. Even Darwin was aware of this, when he wrote the origin of species and so on. Anyway, but this is
evolution.
But anyway, I think something that we wanted to talk about is our influences outside of our immediate.
And that's where I was trying to make a segue to, let's take a step back. So you still didn't believe, right? So you said that you read, you got introduced to Richard Dawkins, or in general, by all the biological perspective.
Yeah. I just wanted now.
But before that, what were your influences?
Before that, I didn't have many. I all the arguments I could come up with against religion were just generally things that I think are available to everyone. For instance, the fact that there is a huge correlation between the religion of a person and their place of their birth. This seems so obvious. But if you think about it, any religion that claims itself to be universal should not be locally restricted like that. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense that God, first of all, particularly the religion I was brought up into, which is Catholicism, comes from it's one of the Abrahamic religions, right? That come from revelations that happen, all of them, in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I'm always reminded of this little quip from Christopher Hitchens when he kind of reflected about the fact that all these revelations happen to nomadic herders that didn't even know how to read, and why God didn't decide to reveal himself to the Chinese who could already read, for instance. Yeah. They all happen to be there in this little very backward place of the world by relative standards with, for instance, the Chinese. Yeah. So I started to question that, it seems we just accept the fact that these religions that claim themselves to have the ultimate universal stress, emphasis on the word universal, have a very, very, very local character. And up to this day, now, obviously, Hindus in India know about the existence and the claims of Christianism as the ultimate universal truth, but still they don't
subscribe. There are more and more cracks in the argument, so that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
There's more and more people who are getting convinced on the other side, and there is a lot of people who haven't been exposed.
Yeah, I just kind of got the notion that what is this game?
Yeah.
Because what's the need of this game of having religions, particularly the Abrahamic religions, to have this missionary character, to go around and convince other people that didn't get to hear the revelations that, this happened many years, couple of thousands of years ago. There's really the only proof we have is some books that were written, actually, some of them even hundreds of years after the fact. And you therefore have to find this evidence compelling. What's the need of it? If you're God and you're a being that can predict, the past, the present, and the future are it's laying there in front of your eyes. You know what's going to happen. You know that there's going to be this whole enterprise of missionary parties going across the world trying to spread the true faith. And what's the need for you to have that kind of game? Really?
No.
There's no need. There's just no need.
So you went through this process of thinking about...
So I was thinking, but I didn't have these arguments very well crystallized in my mind. I just revisited them every now and then. But I did want a more solid foundation for those arguments. And then it's when I stumbled upon the usual suspects.
I think, but you never thought in terms of so in my case, I went one step further. So I have mentioned it to you quite a few times that one of my greatest idols. I don't like using the word idols. Cosmos by Carl Sagan. That was the book that made me get completely wowed by
science,
the universe. Science. Yeah.
Science. Yeah.
And like he had this extremely lyrical way, a very poetic way of talking about things.
What's the power, if you could abstract the power of science, the power that science has on a person that is kind of looking for alternatives about the explanations that tell you how the world works, and leave the religious explanation? What's the power of science? What is it?
What is the beauty of it, you mean?
No, it's I think what I'm trying to get at is that the fact that a scientific narrative and acquiring a scientific viewpoint of how the world works, it's very powerful on anyone that has already doubts about religion, is that it offers another explanation. It offers
a logical, streamlined process of flow of thought. So it's not like there is you assume a lot of things and then after that you build on that.
You assume as little as possible and then you build up from there.
Yes.
It just takes effort, time, dedication. That's the problem. And because when if the alternative is to have the religious text, there are so many assumptions in there. You don't start building from scratch at all. There are just so many things that you have to... Okay, not so many things. If you just give one concession, which is there is one all-powerful, omniscient creator, and because that's how the way they will argue. It's not. You don't have to make many concessions. You only have to make one.
Yeah.
And it sounds on the face of it, it sounds reasonable. It sounds, oh yeah, true, right? It's just one
and then
concession.
that magical thing
But then
does whatever.
You just need to think about the complexity of that involved, the complexity of that being.
And there's like an eternal loop to it also, no?
Who created the creator?
Then you can go on. But that, so the point is, so what Carl Sagan did was provide perspective on the minuscule size, I think we are done. Yeah, the minuscule size of Earth in context of what exists, like what exists in the visible world, right? Like he even portrays it very poetically that there's this pale blue dot suspended in a sunbeam of a medium-sized star.
I think from here there are
so that some paths and branches. Then of course he has given a lot of social commentaries also, and actually those are the ones which really influenced me on how he said that, you know, for years and years people have tried to colonize, kill, murder, loot, people go after power and everything for a fraction of this pale dot, and then you put the context. And then he talks about how astronomy is
zooming out.
Yeah. Astronomy is like a humbling perspective.
Is that in Cosmos? That's in Cosmos, right?
No, I think this was one of... He doesn't really quote the social stuff, but I think there are YouTube videos where he is... you can find a lot of
I remember
videos
that. I think that was part of the... Okay, I don't remember exactly.
No, he gives you these chills. Like, he was quite lyrical. So he gave perspective on the pointlessness of constructed religion. So
the pointlessness of having many religions and the fact that it would have been much.
Of course, a lot of people
easier,
can argue that it's not just religion. Religion is like just a way of seeking identity. So I have my set of issues with nationalism also. Right? Like, because what religion does very strongly is interlink with culture. So that a lot of people will say that I come from this part, I am Muslim.
I don't even understand. For me, the distinction between religion and culture is very artificial. Right? First of all, there's no, because the religion... No, wait, there's no... It has never been discovered by any anthropologist. A culture without a religion. That just doesn't exist. It's even in the most remote island of Papua New Guinea or islands in Micronesia, wherever you have a human population with a certain culture, they are also going to have a religion.
Yes, because we need explanations, we need purposes, and that's why up until now people have created, like, it's completely interlinked.
The point is, the only point I'm trying to make is that there's no point.
Soviet Union.
The
culture of being a communist.
Yeah, but the culture, I don't know if...
I would say there was a cultural aspect to it. Like, of course, it was a very
it was a system.
Brutal system.
But the one thing is
you have your affinity to some things, right?
Okay, but do you think that
maybe using the word culture is very strong because people are very happy to get back.
Do you think that people lost completely their religious belief?
I think
just because they were people. A lot of people, but that dogma was replaced by another kind of dogma.
Yes.
So you know,
so that's the whole point, right? Like, it's not just religion at the end of the day, and
it's not just religion. Yeah, that's right.
And that's what I want to make clear, that right now I'm criticizing religion, but my criticism is against any form of identity which we hold on to so strongly that we lose perspective.
Dogma in your
yes. We should not lose perspective. Of course, identity is important because we are built that way, conditioned that way, to have a certain identity, to hang on to certain things. It starts with our family and then it moves on. But it's about getting the perspective beyond that. It doesn't have to always be that we are better than them and they are better than us.
And that perspective usually is...
And we won't... And I'm sure, like, you have a lot of issues with religion as well. And you see that a lot of the world's problems has their seed there. But if we just completely eradicate religion today, right now, that won't solve problems because there will be other identity-related issues that we will...
sure. But that's kind of outside
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
No, because that's also, I guess skepticism is also a weird word.
I don't think that getting rid of religion is equal to getting rid of all the problems of the world. That would be ludicrous to think. I don't think, obviously, I don't think so. And I don't even think that religion poisons everything, as the subtitle of Hitchens' book says.
Yeah.
I just think, and I'm going to again align myself with something that Sam Harris says quite often, that is, yeah, you can acknowledge that religious people are able to do good based or motivated solely by their religious beliefs.
He points out on there are some ideas that are bad.
But, here's the big but you can be motivated to do those same good deeds based on a rational ideology that does not necessitate religion.
Yeah.
Now, the question to answer is, why does it appear to be the case that a more secular kind of ideology doesn't move people that much sometimes to be more charitable? Or for instance, there are obviously, for sure, there's a lot of secular people that still donate to charities, but not in the same degree as religious people do. So that's kind of an interesting question. There seems to be some correlation between the probability of performing good deeds like charity and religiosity.
Yeah, so I get your point, but it will be interesting to see how the culture of non-believers evolve. Like if you see a certain part of the world where there's like mostly people are non-believers, let's see what's the culture in 2020.
But you don't need that. You have the Scandinavian countries, for instance.
Yeah, and a lot of them are very. So you would say
those are the most egalitarian societies that we have so far, and they are largely.
But I guess there's also a very socio-political reason why they are.
Whatever reason. The point is that you have in a way a kind of control experiment. No, you have control for one variable, which is religiosity, and you have left a bunch of others, historical, social, cultural, etc. variables.
Economical.
And so on. But you have removed almost entirely one of them from the equation, which is religiosity. And what you have produced is the most egalitarian societies that there are.
And decent people, exactly.
So it's possible. The point is that it's possible. You can be charitable, and you can. I mean, this is stating the obvious, but obviously you can be an absolutely good, decent human being without subscribing to any sort of supernatural nonsense. So, sorry for the expletive word right there, but okay.
So I think we have already moved on quite a bit in a very chaotic manner.
A little bit, but I think
maybe right now is a good time to just say where you stand and what you wish to see.
Where I stand. So I really dislike the use of single word labels, but sometimes you subscribe to a certain worldview so much that a single word label would do. And obviously, I'm a skeptical person, which means that I try my best to set the foundations of my worldview as solidly on evidence as possible. I try to gather evidence. I try to look out for different points of view on any given matter, mostly different scientific perspectives for the most part. And based on an evaluation of those perspectives or of the evidence that is put forward from different sides, try to come up with a worldview. But now the religious, supernatural kind of perspective doesn't really weigh on me anymore. So in that sense, I'm a skeptic.
And just a quick question, but it could have an answer worth like hours and hours of discussion. Consciousness? What do you think about?
I get it. I get more or less why you asked that, because there used to be the case that there was a distinction between the material world there is still a distinction for a lot of people between the material world and the, how to call it, spiritual world. That comes, it's a long tradition, but I think Descartes formulated it kind of clearly, right? That you have the matter stuff and you have the res cogitans, the stuff of your soul.
A lot of books start by quoting Descartes.
The stuff of that your soul is made of, and it's separate. And that was taken for granted. And that has a lot to do with the fact that consciousness might be probably I cannot think of a hardest problem to solve so far. Or a problem in which we know we have the least amount of certainty about. That is also an underestimation of the state of progress that we have made, because neurology, for all its setbacks and the problems that still exist on that field, has made a lot of progress.
Sure. We are getting clearer on how we are storing memories and stuff, and there's a lot of
how conscious experience.
And I guess people are in the right way in approaching not the conscious aspect of it, but trying to, because earlier the way humans build systems is we make this, and then something happens. We don't make it hierarchically. So it's only now that we are building up systems or softwares in a hierarchical manner.
Okay, my stand on the problem of consciousness is that I am confident that whatever the solution to the problem is, it's going to be a naturalist solution. It's going to be based on the properties of a complex system, which is the human brain. Not even. Actually, one of the big discoveries of the neurosciences is that it seems to be the case that the brain in isolation, as a single organ and separate from the rest of the body, it's not enough to explain every aspect of consciousness. It's connected. It has like a super highway to other parts of the body that also play an important role in how we perceive subjective experiences and so on. So maybe it's not only about the brain, but the point is that it's going to be a naturalist explanation in the sense of consciousness is an emergent property, broadly speaking, of a complex system. And that's how that works. Who knows? We don't know the details yet. Yeah. But I just don't think there's a...
You cannot rule out something beyond the material world. You cannot rule it out.
No, because you cannot disprove a negative. I mean, that's just impossible. Yeah. You cannot think about it. So there are certain things that you cannot disprove.
So you can let it be as it is. Like you just say that maybe I just need some proof. If you can convince me in that direction,
there will always be. If you want to be a proper skeptical person, you need to leave a certain amount of room and of space for another completely improbable, completely unexpected solution that perhaps does not belong to the material world. You just have to, because of your allegiance to scientific principles, I would say, you have to be rigorous. You have to be intellectually honest to allow for that possibility. On paper, at the very least. But that doesn't make you an agnostic, for instance. That makes you...
But I don't know, because up until 3-4 years back, if you had asked me about this, I was an absolute atheist. Like, everything is the physical world. Consciousness is some sort of an emergent property where you feel a certain way. So you don't need, like, exactly what you said.
So you were more...
I don't know. I feel like about it, but over time,
some shakiness.
Now I feel a bit shaky about being as stubborn about it, because there are way too many people who have ended up the discussion in this manner, like exactly how I probed you right now, up until the point that you have to leave a certain amount.
I would just say there is no reason. I find no reason in the historical track of scientific progress, that particularly in the realm of biology, which is probably where the solution to the problem of consciousness will stem from, eventually. There's just no reason to believe that consciousness is something completely separate from this carbon-based substrate that we are.
Yeah.
There's just
out-of-body experiences are actually out-of-body experiences.
I cannot think. If I stumbled upon something, I would listen to it and I will try to evaluate it on its merits. I would definitely try to. I'm always taking pains to. If you look at my YouTube, whenever I open YouTube, if you see my recommendations, I have recommendations from the far right and from the crazy far left. No, I have in political issues. I have all sorts of opposites in every topic because I'm always trying to look at both sides. I want to minimize the loopholes in my reasoning to an insignificant level. Yeah. I don't want to be caught off guard. I will obviously be caught off guard every now and then because one needs to accept that the amount of the things that you don't know, it's immensely, probably literally infinitely larger than the things that you know and you can possibly know. So there's always possibility for that. But I'm trying to reclaim more and more land.
It makes me very excited. Like I would love to find the logical, the rise. Where is the rise of identity? Like the detachment of the body from the eye.
Where the self comes from and stuff related to that.
So I'm super excited to see how we come up with at least some bearings of it.
But to connect that with
and of course I do sound like I am extremely towards believing in paranormal existence and stuff like that. But that's not the case. I am looking forward to it, but I find it very hard to argue with people when they come to this point. Except for saying that, of course, it's like a negative, right?
I don't so, but I understand that is one of the last bastions of people that want to still hold onto the religious belief because it's a really hard problem. It's something that the fact that you are a conscious being that can experience subjectively things all the time, non-stop, that you can take decisions, that you feel like you have infinite amount of free will. You can at any moment decide to do otherwise, and so on. It feels so otherworldly. So it feels like something that cannot be explained in any other terms other than you were just endowed with it by a supernatural being. But it's just not the case. It just takes effort and time to start versing yourself on those topics until kind of this view that consciousness at the end of the day is going to be a naturalistic phenomenon gets a stronger and stronger footing.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So where do you think? What are your prospects for skepticism in?
Prospects as in like how I see myself in the future or how I would like to see the world?
How would you like to see the world? I think that has a short answer, no? How would you like to see the world? I think you would probably say more and more skeptical, I assume.
Yeah, so in general. I would probably not use the word skeptical.
Or less and less religious?
Yeah. But I would like people to have less and less dogma. For
less
sure.
and less dogma, okay.
But I wouldn't per se go completely against people believing in something more. In principle, I have this issue with having a sense of purpose. You need to believe in certain set of constructs, a certain set of initial principles to define some sort of a purpose of existence. And I think I struggle with it. I don't know if you struggle with it, but I really struggle with it.
I never felt that way, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe I did and I completely forgot about it, but I also see that as something that is troubling for a lot of people, and I completely understand that. You know, the sense of if there's no God,
no need of
the
God.
life. But yeah, there is no God.
It doesn't have to be a God. It has to be a certain set of basic realities.
Yeah, but if there's no, but I would say if there's no God that sets some goal for this life and what comes after it, then what's the purpose of a human life?
No, and for that you need to have some sort of a social construct. You need to.
You don't.
No, necessarily. Not for individuals.
You mean
if you talk about the entire population of society.
I'm not sure about what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that the only other alternative seems to be a purpose that is built upon a social agreement. You know.
Yes. People have their purpose built on the basis of okay, this is the ideal form of life. You grow up, you have a set of kids, and so if you start probing at every small aspect of it.
So you're talking about a clear-cut set of morals.
Yes.
So
and these morals come from nowhere. Of course,
they do come from somewhere. Here's the thing. Also,
there's probably anytime you
but here, no, but it's also, I think, important just to talk about it a little bit, just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of people have this fear that if religion goes away, so does morality. Yeah, there's the only way in which you can ground an objective set of moral values. There's just no alternative. And here the thing is that what they mean by objective moral values is something akin to morality being a property of the universe itself.
No, not the universe.
Yeah, the universe for them was created already, embedded with morality. Yeah. There's morality just in the fact of the universe existing. Yeah. That's kind of what they mean by an objective morality.
But your argument is...
My argument is that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
That doesn't make sense.
But your argument is that we can have a set of fundamental moral truths.
My argument is this. Morality cannot be objective. It shouldn't even be... Yes. It shouldn't even be...
So that was the point.
That should not be the starting point.
It's a subjective conditioning of humans based on how we have evolved.
Wait, a little bit. I could make it a bit more objective than that. It's not. I just don't have the word.
Yeah.
It cannot be objective, but it also cannot be completely subjective. There is an objective requirement that I think you need for morality to make sense at all, which is you have a universe in which morality makes sense. It's a universe that contains sentient beings. If you have a universe,
it's a loop.
No, it's not a loop.
Because you're getting in consciousness.
It's not a loop. No, it's not a loop. If you have a universe made out of rocky planets, of planets like Venus, it's only Venuses around and only stars like the sun, and there's just nothing else all throughout. There's no way to produce complex life. Maybe there's a way, but okay, no way that we know of. And in this universe, it never happens that sentient beings evolve. Then that universe has just no morality. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. Morality only makes sense from the standpoint of the experiences that can be had by beings that can differentiate between suffering and well-being.
Yes.
You know, so it's not completely objective, but it's also
and of
not
course, you can stretch the boundaries up until where, because at some point there will be some animals in the animal kingdom we are also not very clear, or some plants. Of course. I'm not talking about
but that seems to be a string that it touches a chord of fear in people, that if you get rid of religion as such, then morality cannot be had, objective morality in the way they want to have it, which is again a property of the universe itself. It comes together as a package. That just doesn't make sense for me. I think you can completely get rid of that and abide from the kind of morality that I tried, hopefully a little bit successfully, to explain. And you have nothing to worry about anymore, in the sense of, morality is tenable if you have beings that are sentient.
I get the point you're trying to get across, that we don't become evil-minded monsters if we get rid of religion.
So you get one thing out of it.
I was talking about a completely different aspect of it, which is something which we should probably keep it for another day.
Just name it. What? Which aspect?
No, but So your point of view here is if people fear that if you lose religion, you stop being a decent person. Yeah, which is clearly not the case.
I would be very scared and disappointed if that were the case. Which is
exactly the point you wanted to make with the Scandinavian countries, for instance, and a lot of people we know around us as well.
That absolutely.
So with that, I'm completely in agreement. But there's a lot more to talk with respect to this entire thing.
That issue can just give and give.
Yeah. So I guess we should just stop at the moment. I think there was enough food for thought.
I think for the moment we are done. We're going to put skepticism to rest
for a while. Yeah.
Or I don't know.
No, let's put it to rest for a while, and then we'll get back to it at some point.
Sooner than expected, for sure, because it just impregnates almost everything.
It just comes into every conversation.
It's everything. It's a baseline for a lot of discussions. Mm-hmm. So with this, I think we conclude the second episode from Till the Bottom. I hope you enjoy, and hopefully you tune in for the next episode.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what we do, please help us continue doing it simply by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, visiting our website tillthebottom.com, or spreading the voice. All the links are provided in the description. Thank you for listening, and until the next time.